the fan base in NFL in general hasn't like caught up with where these contracts are, because you think about like, all right, what's the top quarterback making? I think everyone goes, oh, 25 mil, right?
Yeah.
No, right now there's 3 quarterbacks in the 20s. There's 5 quarterbacks in the 30s. With Kyler now, there are 8 quarterbacks getting over $40 million a year. So, I think he's clearly going to be in the 30s, even if he doesn't improve. If he plays the season he had last year.
Yeah.
Because we figure Kyler's what? Like, I don't think Kyler's a top 10 quarterback. He's probably.
Neither do I. I think he's really good, but that's the one. And I said that one startled me. That one shook me, and I'm like.
John McMullen Jody McDonald, on Birds 365, joined by our buddy Zangaro from NBC Sports Philly, who I saw on my TV this morning as I was getting ready for Birds 365, watching him put his number one atop his list.
Number one.
Philadelphia Eagles. No great shock that Jalen Hurts is the guy, because the quarterback is the guy pretty much with 32 of 32 teams around the National Football League. When you started your list, Dave, and it was very well done, by the way, thank you very much for sharing with all of us. Do you just write Jalen Hurts in and then figure everybody else out?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's going to be the quarterback on. Yeah, maybe if you're the Tennessee Titans, you can say, all right, Derrick Henry gets that top spot, but there aren't many teams where it's not going to be the quarterback. I'm trying to think around the league you could argue Aaron Donald in LA.
Still the quarterback.
Really it's the quarterback. And Jalen's the most fascinating storyline of this team, because you look around him and the roster on paper looks pretty good, but much of it just comes down to whether or not he takes a step forward and how big that step's going to be. And I'm excited to find out.
So number one is number one, and he should be, Dave, on a list of most important Eagles. So I've gotten myself in trouble, as I usually do this morning. Boy, I saw that Kyler Murray contract, and I just went, oh, my God. I mean, look, there's still time. I mean, Jalen's not even eligible for an extension yet until after the season. But I try to think in my mind of a path how he gets. If he plays like he did last season, we're not talking Kyler Murray money, but we're talking $35, $40 million, and it's only going up.
Yeah, the quarterback contracts have just gotten out of hand. And in our minds, I still think like the fan base in NFL in general hasn't like caught up with where these contracts are, because you think about like, all right, what's the top quarterback making? I think everyone goes, oh, 25 mil, right? No, right now there's 3 quarterbacks in the 20s. There's 5 quarterbacks in the 30s. With Kyler now, there are 8 quarterbacks getting over $40 million a year. So, I think he's clearly going to be in the 30s, even if he doesn't improve. If he plays the season he had last year.
Yeah.
Because we figure Kyler's what? Like, I don't think Kyler's a top 10 quarterback. He's probably.
Neither do I. I think he's really good, but that's the one. And I said that one startled me. That one shook me. And I'm like, well, he's good. Jalen's probably not going to be as good as him. And he's not good enough.
Teams so like you look at the Cardinals and they're in this spot where they have a good young quarterback. He's not great. And they're kind of forced to pay for projection. That's a scary place to be, because say Kyler doesn't put himself in that elite tier and you're paying him elite money, it really hamstrings you. But if you're the Cardinals, you can't like move on from him. So you got to pay that guy.
That's why I told Jody, I said, you have to pay him. But
the Eagles aren't in that situation yet.
Yeah.
But if Jalen really takes a step forward this year, they're going to be in that situation where they're going to say, all right, we have this young guy. Are we willing to throw it away to start over? It just adds another layer to the biggest question surrounding this team. And he's going to get paid. He just is. That's the way this league works.
No,
whether he deserves it or not.
Dave, let me run this one by, and it's probably not a fair question, but I'm real good at asking unfair questions. Understood that in making a determination, Jalen Hurts, has he improved? And if so, how much? is in beauty in the eye of the beholder. But in this analytical sports world in which we live now, everybody wants some number to tie something to defend that decision that he is this guy, he is improved. No, he's not the guy. We're not going down that road. We're listening to John McMullen. We're already doing the tape work on the draftable quarterbacks in the first round for next year. What's the category? I know there are 12 categories that you can look at, but what's the top one? What is the one that Dave Zangaro will zero in on and say, I need to see improvement in this category? He has to go from point A to point B in this category. Not hard and fast, but what category do you put? What does he have to show first?
Yeah, I don't think sometimes the number can be a little misleading, but it's accuracy. And it's not just, what was he, 61.3 last year? It's not just saying, all right, he has to be 65%. I don't think that's giving credit to what that category means enough. But I think that number has to improve, but it also, like, accuracy to me doesn't just mean completing a pass. If there's a 10-yard slant, he has to hit the receiver in stride. You throw the ball behind the receiver, he might catch it. It might be a 9-yard gain. You throw him open a little bit and you throw with anticipation, it becomes a 25-yard gain. That's how you win and lose games in this league at that position. So accuracy is the most important thing he needs to improve. And I don't think the numbers themselves will bear that out, but they'll help us kind of understand the framework of whether or not he's improved there, if that makes sense. But accuracy to me is the one area every quarterback needs to get better at. If there's even if you're 80%, you want it to be at 85. You just want to improve that accuracy, and the numbers don't always bear that out. But he has some other areas to improve, but that will be at the top of the list for me.
Yeah, Nick says he's got those 4 traits he evaluates with quarterbacks: accuracy, decision-making, arm strength, and then movement skills. They check the box, obviously, with movement skills, and then check the box with arm strength, even though some people still don't agree. The Eagles.
So I think so. Let me. I think the accuracy, and I'm putting it under the accuracy umbrella, the throwing with anticipation.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because I think
too late at times.
Yeah. I think he has the arm strength, but sometimes it looks like he doesn't because the ball's a half second late.
Yeah.
And that can mean a world of difference.
Yeah. Especially on the deep ball. Yeah. He's often, and I think one of his, and that comes to decision making as well. Mm-hmm. A lot of times he doesn't trust what he sees at this point of his career. And that's why you see those passing charts. And I always joke they could be sponsored by Dunkin' Donuts because they got the big hole in the middle. He never throws the ball in the middle of the field. So all this stuff has to improve. It might improve. It can improve. It probably will improve. Soft schedule. So let's talk about the coaching staff, the guys who got to get Jalen Hurts and got to improve. Dave, same group, which is, I think, the continuity is a positive. Change in play caller. Do we overrate that as media, as fans, when it comes to play calling, or is it because Nick was very, this is my offense. If Dave Zangaro calls the plays, it's going to be the exact same if I call the plays. That's how the attention to detail is. Do we overrate that kind of play calling stuff? I see it rolling in your eyes.
I don't know where we are now because I think it's kind of been a roller coaster of how we rate that specific job duty. I think in the beginning when you hear Shane Steichens calling the plays, everyone goes, "Oh, he's calling the plays. What's going on?" And then Nick tries to say, "Well, Nick plays it off like it almost means nothing," which isn't true either. I mean, it certainly matters who's picking which individual play gets called into the quarterback. I think it's somewhere in between there, right? Because Nick does have a good point. Like, if they are in lockstep as much as he says they are, then a lot of the work is done during the week. It's done in situational preparedness, like knowing, all right, if we're in a backed up situation, it's 3rd and 3, whatever the exact situation is, then the menu gets a lot shorter, right? You're basically picking from these X amount of plays instead of the whole playbook in that situation. But it absolutely matters who's calling the plays in. If it didn't matter, they wouldn't have made the change, right? So in his attempt to kind of minimize that role, you can't lose sight of the fact that they did it for a reason.
Yeah.
And I don't think the reason was Nick wanting to have more time with his defense. I think that was a byproduct of it. Like all these other things he has to handle, he gets the time for. That's a byproduct. The reason they made the switch was because they thought they weren't being effective enough on offense. You don't make that switch for another reason if it's working. They made the switch because they thought we can get more out of the offense with Shane calling the plays, and that's why they did it. So long-winded way of saying I don't know where people rate it to call it underrated or overrated, but it's probably in the middle of those two.
All right, and what does it say about the relationship between Sirianni and Steichen? That X amount of games, probably 6 or 7, I don't know the exact moment that the light bulb went over Coach Sirianni's head and said, oh, shoot, I'm not doing a good enough job here. I got to get somebody else to do this for me. But you got to have some pretty good faith in the guy you're handing that responsibility off to, don't you? One quarter into the first year you're ever a head coach in the NFL going, all right, I can't get this done here. Take this.
Yeah, especially because when the Eagles hired him, they expected him to call plays. So I do give him a ton of credit, Nick Sirianni, for not having an ego get in the way, because this is such an ego-driven business. And I don't want to make it seem like I'm ragging on Doug Peterson. He would no chance he ever gives up play calling. He loves it too much, and he believes he can call the best games. So I give Nick Sirianni a ton of credit for realizing that it wasn't working and making that switch, because I really don't think a lot of coaches would do it, especially not a lot of young coaches.
Yeah.
Like, he's a rookie coach who was already in a situation where people didn't believe in him. There was literally one team that wanted to hire him, and they hired him. It's not like he had other opportunities. It's not like he was Andy Reid giving it over to Marty Mornhinweg in year 10. He's not established. So it makes it even more impressive to me that he said, all right, this isn't working. We got to try to do what's best for the team. I actually asked him about the ego part of it, and he said, it can't play a role. It just can if we're going to be successful. So I give him credit. I don't know what it means long term, because they hired this guy as the offensive coach, and they expected him to call plays. And I don't know, how long is the leash on Shane Steichen if it doesn't work?
Yeah, because the expectations, Dave, are through the roof now. So, long term, as you mentioned, the Eagles hired him to call the plays. They will use that against him in the future if things come off the rails. I mean, I give Nick Sirianni a lot of credit. Jody knows I'm a big fan of CEO coaches. I never understood sort of the super offensive coordinator. If you're the head coach, get involved. If there's a problem on defense, special teams, get involved. You're the head coach. So I give him a lot of credit for being a young coach, as you said, to be able to do that. But we know Jeffrey Lurie,
what's Graham Harrell up to these days?
Exactly. If you had a Super Bowl winning coach, and he loses Frank and John, they get better jobs. But the expectations were there. The Eagles were going in trying to win. All of a sudden, you got a scapegoat. Give me Mike Rowe. Give me Press Taylor. This, that. Give me Carson Walsh. The expectations create a different environment, and if the Eagles don't live up to them, will they be looking for the scapegoats again?
Yeah, I mean, it's, first off, you mentioned it earlier, John, but them bringing back the same staff, even when you have a successful year, is just so rare.
It's very rare,
extremely rare. So, if they have a bad season, people are going to get fired. That's just that's the way it works. Someone, at least the position coach level, will be out. Probably a few people. It'll depend on. There's a chance Jalen Hurts could end up being a scapegoat if he doesn't play well. And they say, "Oh, we got to get a new quarterback." There are a lot of different scenarios. Things would have to really unravel for it to be the head coach, I think.
No, but the clock would start, don't you think?
Yeah, sure. Well, honestly, the clock starts the minute they get hired in a lot of ways.
Well, you get a little honeymoon. They weren't going to fire him. Some people talked about it though. At 2-5,
people asking if he was going to be done.
Yeah.
There were questions about it because there was a moment where you thought, is he a little overwhelmed by this?
Yeah.
And it wasn't a crazy question to ask at the time. He wasn't. We saw that obviously, and he, with the way they finished last year, he bought himself time. But there's only so much time in this league the way it runs, and professional sports now the way everything runs. So the expectations change a lot. They just do, and it makes it a lot tougher. They're not surprising anyone this year. They're just not.
Dave, I've already misquoted my partner, John McMullen, a couple times today, and he's corrected me. So he'll probably have to do so again because I'm going to speak for him again. You put 3 linebackers on your top 25 list. At number 23, TJ Edwards. At number 17, Kazir White. And at number 15, Nakobe Dean. Now, basically, I know John and I are both going to disagree with you on this, but probably John more so than me. I got no problems or issues with you putting Nakobe Dean number 1, as would I if I had made up the list the same way. Trying to judge and read the way that you did it, I think I understand the way you did it, and I agree with the fact that Nakobe Dean could be that important to the Eagles this year. Why Kaiser White over TJ Edwards? Is it because you think Nakobe Dean is going to take Edwards off the field more than Kaiser White? Because I would have Edwards 2 and Kaiser White 3 out of those in the order that you put them in. I know John would have a different order than you do. Why'd you put the linebackers in the order you put them?
Yeah, first off, I really like TJ. It wasn't a knock on him, but the way I looked at it is I think the evolution here is going to be that Nakobe ends up being the top linebacker, and they're going to play him at both Mike and Will. And this is kind of the way I see it going. I think when he's in the middle, they'll have Kaiser White as the weak side linebacker. And when they're in kind of more run stuff situations, they'll have TJ Edwards as the middle linebacker. They'll have Nakobe Dean as the weak side. And the reason I think they kind of want to have one consistent linebacker is so that you can have the green dot and get the play calls in. And I know that's a lot to ask of a rookie when you're looking at Nakobe Dean to say, all right, here's the green dot. You got to play 2 positions. You got to kind of be one of the leaders of the defense. But I think he's probably up for it, and we'll find out if he's not. I think that would be a surprise to me, given everything we've learned about him, both before he got here and since he's been here. And I just think they'll be in situations more where the 2 linebackers on the field will be to stop the pass. You'll have Nakobe Dean and Kaiser White out there as opposed to TJ and Nakobe. But I still think TJ is going to play a pretty big role in this defense. He's earned that, honestly, based on the way he played last year.
People kind of forget about Davion Taylor because for the first time in years, the Eagles have depth at linebacker. As you just mentioned, I get the sneaking feeling the Eagles like Davion Taylor more than people realize. Now, he's been hurt a lot, but when he was on the field last year, Dave, he showed he was starting to catch on. Obviously, he's very raw. He's very physical. I thought he showed that. Obviously, he's a great athlete. Am I misreading that? Are people dismissing Davion Taylor a little bit too much at this point?
It's funny. I just this morning, my 10 defensive players I want to watch in training camp story went up, and he was one of them. And you're right. He has kind of been forgotten. It was just such a shame he got hurt last year because there's no one who could have used those reps more than Davion. And it was frustrating because you saw him start to get it a little bit. He was in the right spot all of a sudden. He was using his speed, but he was going the right way, which is always what you want to do. I think I might have told you guys, I had a joke that for a while, Davion was their fastest linebacker to the wrong spot. But, he started to get it a little bit last year, and the playing time was showing it. Like he was almost there. But now he is buried a little bit. I don't know. I guess the guy they take off the field is Kaiser White, and you can play him at that will spot. But
so we have that history with And Kaiser got a little bit more money than the LJ Ports of the world and the Corey Nelsons and the Paul Warlows. So I don't think he's going to get cut. But we've been through this before when the Eagles bring in this 1-year linebacker and he's going to be part of the defense, and all of a sudden it goes in a really negative direction.
Yeah.
Any chance of that, or is Kaiser too good for that?
The one thing that makes me question it a little bit is why the Chargers didn't re-sign him.
Yeah.
The Chargers are a team that they're going for it. Like they are all in. He didn't get that much money. He had 144 tackles last year. Brandon Staley says he loves him, and you're like, well, you couldn't pony up $2 million to keep this guy. It seems a little confusing to me. But we also know Brandon Staley and Jonathan Gannon are close. So if there was some giant red flag, I don't know if the Eagles would have signed him. In the back of your mind, it's there because you mentioned the list and you had Eric Wilson to it last year.
Yeah.
And it's a list of like guys you had heard of and you thought maybe they'll come here and be okay. And they weren't. They were all pretty awful. Give Paul Warlow a pass. He got hurt.
Yeah.
But the rest of them, just Zach Brown too. Add him to the list.
Stephen Tulloch, where they throw him on the fire.
Stephen Tulloch lasted. Natural leverage. That was what Jim Schwartz used to say, and I stole that line for myself. I'm not short. I have natural leverage. In the back of my mind, it's there, but I think Kaiser is a better player than those guys. We'll see. There's a fear there. The good news is they didn't spend a ton to get him, so it's not like they broke the bank for this guy, and if he doesn't work out,
well, that's part of it. They can move on pretty easily. That's part of it as well. So
we'll see. I still think he's going to be ahead of Davion at that spot, but I think in training camp we'll see some mixing and matching at linebacker a lot. I mean, they did it last year too. Before they locked in on the starters, they were really kind of using every different combination, and I'd imagine they're going to do that again this year.
I think Davion Taylor will actually depict how much Kaiser White plays more than Kaiser White. If Davion is up to the challenge and that good and stays healthy and is a third-round draft pick as compared to a somewhat on the cheap free agent signing, that might move the needle for the Eagles. All right. I do want to ask you this. We were talking about right before we punched you up. If you're ranking the Eagles against the other 31 teams positionally around the National Football League, are their quarterbacks ranked higher or are their running backs ranked higher? You're comparing the Birds to the 31 other teams and whoever populates those two positions, those groups. Where do the Eagles rank higher, at quarterback or running back?
I heard some of that conversation. It's tough because the quarterback group, like how do you even include Gardner? Because he might not play. Whereas like the running backs,
the little 5% that he does get. That's what backup quarterbacks count for 5 out of 100%.
He's a good backup, though.
He's a very good backup. Yeah. But the problem is like all the running backs are going to play.
Yeah.
Or at least those 3 are going to play at some point. I like Kenny Gainwell too. He was the one guy when I did my top 25 most important that I wish I had a spot for. Because I like him and I think he has a role in this team. I just couldn't find a spot for him. They're probably pretty close. I'd probably give. Really, it comes down to Jalen. I think Jalen's like a high teens quarterback. You're talking like 17 to 20 in the league.
20. That's a good spot.
So maybe I think Miles is probably around there too.
I know.
The average is great, but he can't stay healthy. The other guy's probably I'll go running back, but by a hair. Because I think the other guys.
Madden put Jalen at 24. If you go with the Madden rankings,
no.
I'm not.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't give a flying. You know what
about Madden rankings guy?
Yeah, I don't think any players are. Which they get way too upset about.
It's fun though. They play the game and then they see them.
Hassan Reddick got real fired up. He lost 3 points. He
lost 3 points. Wow.
Yeah.
He only had a good year last year.
Yeah. He went from 12.5 to 11. It's very scientific. So he lost 3 points.
Well, he did. Well, I will say 2 years ago we had 6 forced fumbles. He only had 2 last year.
That's true. That could have played into it as well.
I don't know if Madden's going that deep. I don't know how they do that.
Yeah, I think they get they expense a Pro Football Focus subscription, move a couple names around.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, so might as well.
It doesn't matter. Safety. I'll leave it there. Dave Zangaro, Zangaro, NBCS on Twitter, NBCSports.com. Read them there. We kind of talked about linebacker. Same thing going on at safety now that Jaquiski Tartt is here, Dave. You got 3 potential options: Anthony Harris, Marcus Epps. I get the feeling that you just want to get Marcus Epps on the field. So if Tartt beats somebody out, I think he's going to beat out Anthony Harris. Is that how you see it, or is it any sort of amalgamation of the 3?
Yeah, I kind of look back at what they did last year, and I think last year there were a few forces that led them to the rotation they ended up with. I think it was Rodney coming off the injury and then realizing he couldn't take the full amount of reps. And also Marcus Epps kind of forced their hand a little bit last year because he was their best safety, and they thought, well, we got to play this guy. I was a little surprised that they brought Anthony Harris back because I thought he was okay last year, and I understand Gannon has the familiarity with him, but I don't know. I didn't do much for me. So
yeah,
I think it's probably going to be some sort of rotation at least early in the year. And if they start the season and they go, all right, well, these 2 guys are clearly our best bet, I think they would go to it. I went back and watched some of Tartt, by the way. There's a lot to like there. I don't think he's a great player, but he'll at least help them depth-wise because
what do you make of that, though? Because he went back, he started a lot of games on a very good defense, Tartt. Mm-hmm. They made a Super Bowl. They almost got back to a Super Bowl. He's been a starter 60 some odd games.
Yeah.
He got a 1-year deal from them at the veteran minimum. He got a 1-year deal now near the veteran minimum. Why, if he's that successful, what are people around the league missing with a guy who started 60 games for a good defense?
Yeah, I think he's just good. And if you're just a good player, I think you'd rather go younger. He's been in the league 7 years now. So, if you can get a rookie to do the same job, why wouldn't you do that? Eagles don't have that. They don't have any young players to fill that role. Kayvon Wallace to me has been a disappointment.
Yeah.
When they made that pick, I thought this guy in the 4th round, like we all watched him play at Clemson, and I thought this guy can play. I think health has played a role in that. He hasn't, even last year, they tried to get him on the field before Marcus Epps even, and he got hurt. So maybe there's something there. I understand why they can't rely on that because he's entering year 4 now?
Yeah.
And we just haven't seen it from him. So I think it'll be a combination.
It's Kayvon year. Epsie's in a contract year.
So maybe Kayvon's year 3. Yeah, Kayvon's year 3.
Kayvon's year 3. Yeah.
And by the way, Dave, if you're wondering why the Chargers let Kazir White walk out the door, I'm wondering why the 49ers let Jaquiski Tartt walk out the door. And, oh, by the way, San Francisco's defense is better than the Chargers defense. So they've done a better job at putting together a good defense the last couple of years with their coaching staff. That's why I'm not as sold on Jaquiski Tartt as some others are. All right, last thing, and I asked this question. Who did we have on yesterday? I asked this to. Jeff Mosher. When you get your grass time next week, who's the one guy you're going to make sure that you're not standing next to? You need at least a 1-person, if not 2-person buffer, because either they're going to talk your ear off or they haven't showered recently enough, or for whatever reason, you're going to make sure, I'm going to be a couple people down.
Did Mosher answer this question?
Oh, yeah.
No.
He did. He said, I just make sure I'm not next to either John Clark or BLG because they're too big.
They're too tall.
They make him look small.
Yeah.
That's
good. They're too tall. Yeah, that's a tough question. You can't.
I mean, trust me. I have an answer, but I won't tell you.
That's it. You're done. Very good. As long as we know, that's all we need to know.
Yeah.
Dave's a
Now,
guy-
now I'm going to get a Now I'm going to get a complex when Dave runs 20 yards.
When I see it, John, I want to start walking over to the other field.
He didn't wink, John, so I think you're safe. Dave, always a pleasure. You did a great job with the list. We got a lot of talk out of it here on Birds 365. Thank you very much for that. We appreciate you jumping on with us today. We're surely going to have you on before the season gets underway.
All right, take care,
Thanks,
guys.
Dave.